The Velith hegemony had ruled the stars for 12,000 years. Their empire stretched across 1,000 worlds. Their ships darkened the skies of countless planets. Their name brought fear to every corner of the galaxy. The Velith were not evil by their own thinking. They simply believed in one truth above all others. Kill the threat before it grows. Destroy the enemy before it knows it is your enemy. This was their way. This was how they had survived for so long. Their scouts traveled far and wide. They searched for young species. Species that had just discovered fire. Species that had just built their first cities. Species that had just sent their first radio signals into the dark void of space. When they found such species, they did not offer friendship. They did not offer trade. They offered only fire and death. It was on a normal day that a scout ship detected something strange. Radio waves, weak and scattered, coming from a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy. The planet had one moon. It had green lands and blue oceans. It was beautiful in a simple way. The scouts watched for many years. They saw the creatures on this world. They walked on two legs. They had no fur. They were soft and weak. They killed each other over small pieces of land. They worshipped gods that did not exist. They were primitive in every way. The scouts named this world Earth. They named these creatures humans. A report was sent to the High Council of the Velith hegemony. The council was made of 12 elders. They had lived for centuries. They had ordered the death of 100 species. To them, this was just another day. Elder Corax read the report aloud. His voice was cold and dry like wind over dead leaves. "The humans have split the atom," he said. "They have built weapons of great destruction. They fight among themselves, but they grow smarter each year. In 200 years, perhaps 300, they may reach the stars." The other elders nodded slowly. They had heard this story before. A young species shows promise. A young species grows too fast. A young species becomes a threat. "What do we know of their military strength?" asked Elder Thiessen. "Nothing of concern," Corax replied. "They have rockets that barely leave their own atmosphere. They have nuclear weapons, but no way to use them beyond their own planet. They are children playing with matches." The vote was quick. The vote was unanimous. The humans would die. 3 dreadnoughts were sent. These were massive ships, each one 5 kilometers long. They carried weapons that could crack a planet in half. They carried enough soldiers to conquer a dozen worlds. For the humans, 3 dreadnoughts was more than enough. It was almost too much. The fleet commander was Admiral Varth. He was old and tired. He had burned many worlds in his long life. This mission bored him. There was no challenge here, no glory, just another extermination. The journey took 3 months. When the dreadnoughts arrived at Earth, they found exactly what they expected. A primitive world with primitive defenses. Satellites floated in orbit like toys. Small space stations held humans who stared at the massive ships with terror in their eyes. Admiral Varth did not waste time with words. He gave no warning. He made no demands. The bombardment began at once. Great beams of energy fell from the sky. Cities vanished in columns of fire. New York burned. Tokyo burned. London burned. Moscow burned. The humans ran and screamed, but there was nowhere to run. There was nowhere to hide. The oceans boiled where the beams touched them. Mountains crumbled into dust. The sky turned black with smoke and ash. 7 billion voices cried out in pain and fear. Mothers held their children. Soldiers fired useless weapons at the sky. Priests prayed to gods who did not answer. It took 6 hours. 6 hours to end a species. 6 hours to silence a world. Admiral Varth watched the destruction from his command deck. He felt nothing. He had done this many times before. The humans were just another number in his long record. Another species erased. Another threat removed. "Scan for survivors," he ordered. His officers obeyed. Their instruments swept across the burning planet. They found nothing. No life signs. No resistance. Just fire and death and silence. "The mission is complete," Varth announced. "Record the coordinates for the archive." We returned home. The dreadnoughts turned away from Earth. They jumped into faster-than-light travel and vanished into the darkness between stars. Behind them, the blue planet burned. Its oceans were gone. Its forests were ash. Its cities were memories. The Velith recorded Earth as Extinction Event 7341, a minor note in their long history. A small victory in their endless war against the future. They celebrated when the fleet returned home. Medals were given. Songs were sung. The name Earth was forgotten within a generation. But the Velith had made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. They did not notice the 3 small ships that escaped from Earth's dark side during the attack. These ships were fast and quiet. They slipped away while the dreadnoughts focused on the planet. They did not notice the quantum beacon that activated in the ruins of a city called Geneva. This beacon sent a signal across the galaxy. A signal that said one word: begin. They did not notice that humanity had been expecting this attack for 47 years. Human scientists had detected the Velith scouts long ago. They had watched the Watchers. They had prepared. Most importantly, the Velith did not notice the greatest secret of all. Earth was not humanity's home. Earth was a trap, a honeypot, a sacrifice. The real humanity lived elsewhere. They lived on hidden worlds in hidden places. They had spread across the stars in secret, building ships and weapons and patience. They had left 7 billion volunteers on Earth. 7 billion heroes who agreed to die so that humanity could live. These heroes knew the Velith would come. They knew they would not survive. They accepted this fate with courage and grace. Now the trap was sprung. Now the Velith had shown their true nature. Now humanity knew exactly who their enemy was. And humanity began to plan. In the darkness between galaxies, on worlds the Velith had never found, humans gathered. They did not cry. They did not despair. They remembered their fallen brothers and sisters. They carved 7 billion names in the black stone. And they waited. The Velith hegemony believed they had killed a primitive species. They believed they were safe. They believed the universe belonged to them. They were wrong. They had not killed humanity. They had woken it up. 60 years passed in silence. The Velith hegemony continued its endless expansion. More worlds fell under their control. More species were exterminated. The burning of Earth became a distant memory, a small footnote in their vast history. New generations of Velith were born. They learned of Earth only as a minor victory. Nothing special. Nothing important. High Admiral Lesser was the greatest military commander of his generation. He had led fleets across the galaxy. He had crushed rebellions and conquered empires. His name brought fear to enemies and pride to his people. His scales were gray with age, but his mind remained sharp as a blade. On a quiet morning, a communication officer rushed into his chambers. The young officer was shaking. His eyes were wide with confusion and fear. "High Admiral," he stammered. "We have received a message. You must see this." Lesser followed the officer to the communications center. A dozen technicians stood around a holographic display. They spoke in hushed whispers. When Lesser entered, they fell silent. "Show me," Lesser commanded. The message played. It was in the Velith language, perfectly spoken. The voice was cold and calm. "We remember what you did. We remember every name. We remember every death. Come to these coordinates. Come in force. Come with everything you have. We will be waiting." The last children of Earth. Desser stared at the display for a long moment. His claws tapped against the console. "Earth?" he finally said. "That primitive world we cleansed 60 years ago?" "Yes, High Admiral. We have verified the coordinates. There's something there. Our long-range sensors detect a massive energy signature. It appears to be a space station of enormous size." Desar's mandibles clicked in thought. This was impossible. Earth had been destroyed completely. No survivors had been detected. The Velith were thorough. They never left survivors. And yet here was proof. Someone had survived. Someone had grown strong enough to build a station. Someone was challenging the Velith hegemony. "It must be a trick," said one of his advisors. "A trap of some kind." "Perhaps," Desser replied. "But we cannot ignore such an insult. If survivors remain, they must be destroyed. More importantly, we must learn how they escaped. We must ensure this never happens again." The decision was made within days. Desser would lead the Burning Tide, the largest fleet assembled in 300 years. 400 warships, 50 dreadnoughts, 300,000 soldiers. Enough firepower to destroy a dozen worlds. Some thought this was too much. Some said Desser was overreacting to a simple message. But Desser was not a fool. He had lived long enough to know that the universe held many surprises. Better to crush this threat with overwhelming force than to underestimate an unknown enemy. The fleet gathered at the edge of Velith space. Ship after ship arrived until the formation stretched across thousands of kilometers. Weapons were tested. Soldiers were prepared. Prayers were offered to the old gods. Desser stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. It was the largest ship in the fleet. Its weapons could crack moons. Its shields could withstand the heat of a star. He felt proud looking at the fleet behind him. This was Velith power. This was Velith strength. "All ships report ready," his first officer announced. "Then we jump," Desser said simply. 400 ships entered faster than light travel at the same moment. Space stood around them. Stars became lines of light. The journey was short, just a few hours. The coordinates were not far from Earth's dead system. When the fleet emerged from faster than light travel, Desser leaned forward in his command chair. "Report," he demanded. "What do our sensors show?" The tactical officer was silent for a long moment. His hands moved across his console again and again. "High Admiral, there is nothing here." "Nothing? What do you mean, nothing?" "The energy signature is gone. There is no station, no fleet, no structures of any kind. Just empty space." Desser felt confusion and anger rise in his chest. They had come all this way for nothing? The message had been a trick? A waste of their time and resources? "Scan again," he ordered. "Search every corner of this sector." For hours, the fleet searched. Probes were launched. Sensors swept across light years of space. They found absolutely nothing. Just cold void and distant stars. "A hoax," Desser muttered. "They lured us here to waste our resources, to make us look foolish." He was about to order the fleet home when his navigation officer made a sound. It was a small sound, a gasp of surprise and fear. "High Admiral, we have a problem." "What now?" "I cannot locate our return vector. I cannot calculate the path home." Desser turned to face the officer. "Explain." "Sir, the stars are wrong. None of the patterns match our charts. I cannot find any known star systems. It is as if we are no longer in our galaxy. Cold fear spread through the bridge. Officers looked at each other with wide eyes. This was impossible. You could not move an entire fleet without them knowing. But the evidence was clear. The stars were different. The galactic core was in the wrong position. They were somewhere else. Somewhere unknown. "We have entered some kind of spatial anomaly," the science officer said, his voice trembling. "A pocket dimension. A sealed area of space. We are trapped inside." "Trapped?" The Tsar's voice was barely a whisper. "Yes, High Admiral. There appears to be no exit. The boundaries of this pocket are approximately 1 light hour in diameter. Beyond the boundaries, there is nothing. Not empty space. Nothing at all." Panic spread through the fleet. Captains demanded answers. Soldiers prayed and cursed. The communications channels filled with frightened voices. Vesser forced himself to remain calm. He had faced many dangers in his long life. He would face this one too. "All ships maintain formation," he broadcast to the fleet. "We will find a way out of this trap. We are the burning tide. We are the might of the Velith hegemony. We do not surrender to tricks and illusions." But in his heart, Vesser felt something he had not felt in centuries. Fear. For 3 days, the fleet searched for an exit. They fired weapons at the boundaries. They tried to punch through with faster-than-light drives. They sent probes in every direction. Nothing worked. The pocket dimension was sealed tight. On the 4th day, something appeared. It materialized at the center of the void, as if growing from nothing. The fleet detected it on their sensors before they could see it with their eyes. It was not a station. It was not a weapon. It was a monument. A black obelisk, 10 kilometers tall, floating in the darkness. Its surface was covered in writing, billions of tiny marks carved into the stone. Names. 7 billion names in languages the Velith translation systems could not read. At the base of the monument, in every known galactic language, a single phrase repeated again and again. "You called us primitive. You called us alone. You were wrong on both counts." Vesser stared at the monument. His blood ran cold. For the first time in his long life, he understood that he had made a terrible mistake. The humans were not dead. They had been waiting. And now the trap was complete. The black monument floated in silence. 400 Velith warships surrounded it, their weapons pointed at the massive structure. But no one fired. No one moved. Every eye was fixed on those carved names. 7 billion names. 7 billion dead. High Admiral Vesser had seen many things in his long life. He had watched worlds burn. He had ordered the death of millions. But this monument filled him with a dread he could not explain. "Scan the structure," he ordered. "Find out what it is made of. Find out how it appeared." His officers worked quickly. Their instruments swept across the monument again and again. The results made no sense. "The stone is not from any known world," the science officer reported. "The energy readings are unlike anything in our database. And the names. High Admiral, these names are carved at the atomic level. Each letter is made of individual atoms arranged with perfect precision." "That is impossible," Vesser said. "Yes, sir. It should be impossible. But there it is." Before Vesser could respond, every screen on every ship flickered. A holographic image appeared on each bridge, each command center, each crew quarters. The image showed a human female. She wore a military uniform of dark blue. Her hair was black and cut short. Her eyes were dark and empty of mercy. She stood straight and tall. Her voice was calm and cold when she spoke. "My name is Admiral Yuki Tanaka. I am the great-granddaughter of survivors. I am the commander of the Remembrance Fleet. I am the voice of 7 billion ghosts." The Velith listened in frozen silence. 60 years ago, your species came to Earth. You gave no warning. You made no demands. You simply began killing. You burned our cities. You boiled our oceans. You killed every man, woman, and child you could find. She paused. Her eyes seemed to look directly at Desser. You thought we were primitive. You thought we were alone. You thought you had destroyed us completely. You were wrong. The hologram flickered and changed. Now it showed images. Images of humans building ships in secret. Images of hidden colonies on distant worlds. Images of children being born and raised in darkness, taught to hate the Velith with every breath. Earth was not our only world, Tanaka continued. It was our sacrifice. 7 billion volunteers who agreed to die so that we could learn the truth about you. So that we could prepare. So that we could wait. The images changed again. Now they showed the moment of Earth's destruction. The fire falling from the sky. The cities burning. People screaming and dying. The hologram did not look away from the horror. It forced the Velith to watch. We recorded everything, Tanaka said. We watched our brothers and sisters die. We listened to their final words. We carved their names in stone. And we made a promise. Our voice dropped lower. It became something cold and terrible. We promised that you would pay. Not with a quick death. Death is too easy. Death is too kind. You gave our people fire and ash. You gave them seconds of terror and then nothing. That is not payment enough. Desser found his voice. What do you want? What are your demands? The hologram turned to face him directly. There are no demands, Admiral Desser. There is no negotiation. You are wondering why there is nothing here. Why your weapons find no targets. Why your engines cannot escape. She smiled. It was the coldest smile Desser had ever seen. You came expecting a battle. You came expecting an enemy you could shoot and bomb and destroy. We are not offering you that satisfaction. You committed genocide against what you believed was our only world. You exterminated 7 billion civilians to prevent a possible future threat. The smile faded. There will be no battle today, Admiral. There will only be consequences. The hologram vanished. For a long moment, nothing happened. The fleet waited in terrible silence. Then, one by one, ships began to report problems. Aye, Admiral. Our weapons are offline. Our engines are not responding. Life support is failing on Deck 7 through 12. We have lost control of the reactor. Across the fleet, systems failed. Not quickly. Not all at once. Slowly and carefully, like a surgeon cutting away diseased flesh. The ships of the Burning Tide became floating coffins. The Tsar's first officer ran diagnostics on the flagship. His scales turned pale with fear. Nanomachines, he said. Microscopic machines. They are inside every system. They must have infected us the moment we entered this space. They have been waiting inside our ships all along, and now they have activated. Fight them, Desser commanded. Purge the systems. Do something. We cannot, sir. They are too small, too numerous, too sophisticated. Our countermeasures do nothing. It is as if they were designed specifically to defeat our technology. Because they were. The humans had spent 60 years studying the Velith. 60 years learning their weaknesses. 60 years building weapons that could not be stopped. The lights on the Eternal Dominion flickered and died. Emergency power activated, bathing everything in red light. Across the fleet, ship after ship went dark. 400 vessels, the pride of the Velith hegemony, reduced to silent hulks floating in the void. The crew began to panic. Soldiers who had never known fear screamed and ran through dark corridors. Officers who had commanded fleets wept like children. The terror was absolute. But no one died. The life support systems kept running at minimum power. Air continued to flow. Temperature remained survivable. The humans were not killing them. They were keeping them alive. That made it worse somehow. Death would have been simple. Death would have been clean. This was something else entirely. Hours passed. Then days. The Veloth sat in their dead ships and waited. They had no power to escape. They had no way to call for help. They could only float in the darkness and think about what they had done. On the third day, new ships appeared. Human ships. They were not warships. They were something else. Long and sleek, with massive cargo holds and gentle lights. They moved through the Veloth fleet like farmers moving through a field of wheat. They began to take prisoners. Bay doors opened. Transport pods emerged. They attached to Veloth ships and cut through the hulls with precision lasers. One by one, Veloth soldiers were taken. Not killed. Taken. Carried away to the human ships. Thesser watched from the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. He watched his fleet disappear one soldier at a time. He watched his empire's greatest armada become a collection of empty shells. When the humans finally came for him, he did not fight. He could not fight. There was nothing to fight with. Two human soldiers in black armor escorted him to a transport pod. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their silence said everything. As the pod carried him away from his flagship, Thesser looked back at the black monument. 7 billion names glittered in the light of distant stars. He understood now. This was not war. This was judgment. And the sentence had already been decided. The transport pod carried High Admiral Thesser through the darkness between ships. Through the small window, he could see human vessels moving through the frozen Veloth fleet. They worked with terrible efficiency. No wasted movement. No mistakes. Every action was planned and perfect. Thesser had commanded armies. He had led invasions. He recognized military precision when he saw it. The humans had practiced this operation 1,000 times. They knew exactly what they were doing. The pod docked with a larger ship. Thesser was led through clean white corridors by silent guards. The ship was quiet except for the soft hum of engines. Everything was smooth and calm and completely terrifying. They brought him to a large room with a window that looked out at the stars. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood waiting for him. She was smaller than he expected. Humans were such fragile creatures. Soft skin, weak bones. How had they survived? How had they built all this? High Admiral Thesser, she said. Her voice was the same as in the hologram. Cold as space. Please sit. There was a chair designed for Veloth anatomy. Thesser sat because he had no other choice. You have questions, Tanaka said. I will answer some of them. What do you want from us? Thesser asked. I told you already. There are no demands. There is no negotiation. Then what is this? Revenge? Execution? Tanaka walked to the window. She looked out at the stars for a long moment before speaking. My grandmother was 7 years old when your ships came to Earth. She lived in a city called Osaka. When the bombardment began, her parents pushed her into an underground shelter. They saved her life and lost their own. She was found 3 days later by the rescue teams. She turned to face Thesser. She remembered everything. The fire in the sky. The screams. The way her mother smiled and said everything would be okay. She told these stories to my mother. My mother told them to me. We never forgot. We never forgave. So this is revenge. No, Tanaka shook her head. Revenge would be killing you. Revenge would be burning your worlds the way you burned ours. We could do that. We have the power. But that would make us like you. She sat down across from Desser. We spent 60 years planning this. 60 years building ships and weapons and traps. 60 years studying your species. We learned everything about you. Your biology. Your psychology. Your deepest fears. And what did you learn? That you fear extinction above all else. Your entire philosophy is based on destroying others before they can destroy you. The irony is almost funny. You commit genocide to prevent genocide. You kill children to protect your own children. Desser said nothing. She was not wrong. So we designed a punishment that fits the crime. You will not die today, High Admiral. None of your people will die. That is our promise. Then what? Tanaka pressed a button on the table. A hologram appeared showing a beautiful planet. Green forests. Blue lakes. 2 suns in a purple sky. This is your new home. We built it for you. A perfect recreation of your homeworld. Every plant, every animal, every detail is exactly right. You will live there in comfort. You will have food, shelter, medicine. You will want for nothing. A prison, Desser said. A sanctuary, Tanaka corrected. You will live out your natural lives in peace. You will grow old surrounded by beauty. And when you die, it will be of old age, in warm beds, with full stomachs. And the catch? You can never leave. You can never contact your hegemony. You can never have children. When the last of you dies, your time ends. But you will not suffer. You will not starve. You will simply live. Desser felt cold fear spreading through his chest. You are going to let our species die. No, we are going to let your fleet disappear. Your government will believe the burning tide was lost to some cosmic accident. They will send search parties. They will find nothing. Just empty space and silence. Exactly what you intended for us. She leaned forward. And then, in 100 years, we will do it again. Another fleet will receive another message. Another fleet will come to another trap. Another fleet will vanish. Century after century, we will harvest your military. Ship by ship. Soldier by soldier. Always leaving nothing behind. Always letting your people live in comfort while your empire slowly bleeds. That is monstrous, Desser whispered. Is it? Tanaka's voice hardened. You burned 7 billion people alive. You killed children in their beds. You boiled oceans full of life. You did this not because we threatened you, but because we might threaten you someday. You killed us for a crime we had not yet committed. She stood and walked back to the window. The genocide of Earth was not the end of humanity. It was our awakening. Before you came, we were divided. Nations fought nations. People hated each other for foolish reasons. Your attack united us. Your cruelty gave us purpose. You created the very enemy you feared. And now you will destroy us. Eventually. Not through war. Not through fire. Through patience. Through time. Through disappearance. She turned back to face him. We have seeded ourselves across 47 worlds you have never detected. We have 300 stations hidden in the darkness between stars. We are everywhere and nowhere. We have technology you cannot imagine. And we have something more powerful than any weapon. What? Memory. We remember every name, every face, every death. We will remember until the last human dies. And we will never stop. We will never forgive. We will never forget. Guards came to take Desser away. As he was led to the door, he stopped and looked back at Tanaka. Why tell me this? Why explain your plan? Tanaka smiled that cold smile again. Because you will spend the rest of your long life knowing what is coming. Knowing you cannot stop it. Knowing that your empire will fall, not in fire and glory, but in silence and emptiness. You will die in comfort, Desser, but you will die knowing that everything you built will turn to dust. You are monsters. Yes, she agreed. We are. You made us this way. The guards led Desser away. Behind him, the human admiral stood alone, looking out at the stars. The harvest continued for 3 more days. 300,000 Vela soldiers were taken from their ships and transported to their new home. They were treated well. No one was harmed. No one was tortured. They were given good food and soft beds and beautiful views. And one by one, they realized the truth. They were not prisoners. They were specimens, collected and preserved and studied. The humans wanted to understand them, wanted to learn how they thought, wanted to know their weaknesses. This generation of Velith would live in comfort, yes, but everything they said and did would be watched and recorded and analyzed. When the harvest was complete, the human ships gathered together. The black monument remained floating in the void, surrounded by 400 empty Velith vessels. The ships would stay there forever. A graveyard. A warning. A reminder. Admiral Tanaka gave the order to leave. The human fleet entered faster than light travel and vanished into the darkness. Behind them, the pocket dimension remained sealed. The empty ships of the burning tide drifted in silence, and the 7 billion names carved into black stone glittered in the cold light of foreign stars. The trap had worked perfectly. The first harvest was complete. There would be many more. 300 years passed. The Velith hegemony did not fall in fire. It did not collapse in war. It simply faded, like a star slowly going dark, like a heartbeat growing weaker with each passing moment. It began with the disappearance of the burning tide. 400 ships, the greatest fleet in 3 centuries, gone without a trace. Search parties found nothing. Investigators discovered nothing. The void had swallowed them whole. The High Council declared it a cosmic accident. Strange things happened in deep space. Ships were lost sometimes. It was tragic, but not unheard of. Then it happened again. 50 years after the burning tide vanished, another fleet received a message. Different coordinates. Same invitation. Come and find us. Come with everything you have. This time, the hegemony sent 600 ships. None returned. Again, the searches found nothing. Again, the investigators discovered nothing. Just empty space and silence. Fear began to spread through the empire. Whispers passed between soldiers. Rumors grew among the common people. Something was out there. Something was hunting them. The High Council tried to keep order. They banned talk of the disappearances. They punished those who spread fear. They insisted that the hegemony was strong, that nothing could threaten them. But the disappearances continued. Every 50 to 70 years, a message would come. Different coordinates each time. Different wording, but always the same result. Fleets would gather. Fleets would jump into the void. Fleets would vanish. After 200 years, the Velith stopped responding to the messages. They refused to send more ships into the darkness. They thought this would end the disappearances. They were wrong. The humans did not need invitations anymore. They had learned enough. They knew how to find Velith ships. They knew how to trap them. They knew how to make them vanish without anyone seeing. Patrol ships went missing. Trade convoys disappeared. Research vessels never returned from routine missions. The losses were small at first. A ship here. A crew there. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that could be called an attack. But over decades, the numbers added up. The Velith military shrank. There were not enough soldiers to defend every world. There were not enough ships to patrol every border. The empire that had conquered 1,000 planets began to pull back. Colonies were abandoned. Outposts were closed. The hegemony grew smaller with each passing year. And still they found nothing. No enemy fleets. No battle stations. No armies massing on their borders. Just empty space where their ships used to be. Just silence where voices used to speak. The common people grew terrified. They stopped joining the military. They stopped traveling between worlds. They stayed on their home planets and looked up at the stars with fear in their eyes. The old stories changed. Once, Velith children were told tales of glory and conquest. Now, they were told to be careful. Now they were told that something lived in the darkness. Something that watched. Something that waited. Something that took ships and soldiers and never gave them back. The name Earth, forgotten for generations, began to appear again. Old records were found. Old histories were read. The Velith learned what their ancestors had done. And they understood. This was not random. This was not accident. This was payment for a debt 300 years old. A debt written in fire and blood and 7 billion names. The last High Council met in a bunker, deep beneath the Velith homeworld. 12 elders, ancient and afraid, gathered around a dying flame. Their empire was crumbling. Their people were broken. Their military was a shadow of its former glory. "We must surrender," said one elder. "We must find these humans and beg for peace." "How?" asked another. "We have searched for 3 centuries. We have found nothing. They are ghosts. They are shadows. We cannot surrender to an enemy we cannot find. Then we are doomed. Slowly, quietly doomed." The elders sat in silence. There was nothing more to say. Their species had made a terrible mistake 300 years ago, and now they were paying the price. Then a guard entered the chamber. "A ship has arrived," he said. "A small ship. It carries a single passenger. A human." The elders looked at each other in shock. In 300 years, no human had ever shown themselves. No human had ever come to speak. They had only taken and vanished and left nothing behind. "Bring them here," the eldest elder commanded. The human was young, a woman with dark skin and gentle eyes. She wore simple clothes. She carried no weapons. She walked into the chamber of the High Council as if she owned it. "I am Ambassador Chun," she said. Her voice was warm and kind. "I bring a message from the human collective." "Speak," said the eldest elder. His voice trembled. "We are not here to destroy you. That was never our goal. We could have burned your worlds a century ago. We could have killed every Velith in the galaxy. We have the power. We chose not to use it." She walked to the center of the chamber. "Instead, we let you feel what our ancestors felt. The slow terror of extinction. The helplessness. The knowledge that something in the dark hungers for you and cannot be stopped. For 300 years, you have lived in fear. Now you understand." Ambassador Chun placed a small device on the floor. A hologram appeared showing planets filled with Velith, cities, farms, children playing, elders resting, millions of Velith living in peace. "These are your people," she said. "Every soldier we have taken over 3 centuries. 17 billion Velith, living in comfort, unharmed. We kept our promise. We never killed them. We simply kept them." The elders stared at the hologram. Tears formed in their ancient eyes. "Why?" whispered the eldest. "Why show us this now?" Ambassador Chun smiled. It was not a cold smile like Admiral Tanaka's long ago. It was warm and sad and almost kind. "Because you learned." She walked among the elders, looking each one in the eye. "Your children no longer sing songs of conquest. Your people no longer dream of burning worlds. When young Velith are taught about Earth, they are taught it as a warning, not a victory. Fear has done what diplomacy never could. You have changed. She stopped before the eldest elder. We will release them. All 17 billion. We will return them to your worlds. Your species will continue. Your empire can rebuild. What do you want in return? Nothing. We want nothing except this. Treat the next species you meet with kindness. When you find young civilizations sending radio signals into the void, do not burn them. Help them. Teach them. Let them grow. She turned to leave. We will be watching. We are always watching. You will not receive a second lesson. If you ever again destroy an innocent species, we will return. And next time, we will not be merciful. Ambassador Chun walked to the door. She stopped and looked back one final time. The universe is vast, Elder. It is full of wonders and terrors beyond imagination. Some of those terrors are ancient. Some of them are cruel beyond measure. And some of them remember everything. She smiled that sad smile. Earth was our homeworld. We loved it. We lost it. We built a new home among the stars, but we never forgot the old one. Those 7 billion names are carved into our hearts. They will be carved there until the last human dies. She left the chamber. The elders sat in silence for a long time. Outside the bunker, the stars glittered cold and beautiful. For the first time in Velith history, the hegemony looked at those stars not as territory to conquer, but as a vast mystery to explore. They were not alone. They never had been. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, humanity continued its quiet watch, patient, unseen, remembering. The Velith had called them primitive. They had called them alone. They had believed that genocide would make them safe. They had found nothing instead, and nothing had become everything. The universe was full of monsters. The Velith had learned to fear one of them, but they had also learned something else, something far more important. Sometimes monsters could become guardians. Sometimes the darkness protected as well as threatened. Sometimes nothing was exactly what you needed to find. The story of Earth ended in fire 300 years ago. But the story of humanity was just beginning. They had emerged from the ashes of their lost world stronger and stranger and more patient than any species in the galaxy. They would watch over the stars for 1,000 generations. They would remember every name. They would ensure that what happened to Earth would never happen again. And in the end, the Velith understood the greatest truth of all. The genocide had not destroyed humanity. It had created something far worse. It had created a species that would never forget. And that was the most terrifying thing of all.